Okay, so for this project, as you prepare your files, you're going to be using this template After Effects file that I created for you. And I want to take you through how it works, how it's set up, and how to use it. So when you open it up, you'll see that there's just a couple things in it. There's a preview template comp, and then there's a bunch of template files here. The preview template looks like this, and it has all those files in it, and they're automatically turned on. So we're going to be projecting on this side of this tower of the Opalka. And for this project, we're dividing it into 4 regions, A, B, C, and D. And you can design your projections to go on any of these regions or all of these regions or some combination of them. The purpose of this template file is to help you preview your animations before you export them so you can get a sense of how they'll look on the side of the tower when they're projected on Fire Night. So here's how it works. The top layer here is just a reminder of what all those regions are. And then underneath that, I have these files that they're the sections of the tower that you can turn off, revealing a hole underneath them. You'll notice they're not perfectly lined up with the photograph underneath, but that's okay because things are going to shift and move before we do the projections anyways. This file on the bottom is just the entire building with a hole cut in it. And the idea is that you're going to create your own animations. You're going to drop them into this template. And you're going to preview them here before you export them. So let's go ahead and try and make one. Let's imagine that you're going to make your first animation. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is go up and make a new comp. So new composition, new composition. And the composition is going to be 1920 by 1080. We're going to do all of these at that size. I'm going to call this one checkerboard. Okay. And I'm going to make it 10 seconds long. All of the different chapters, the different scenes that we're going to make in the projection mapping software are going to be 20 seconds long. Your animation can be up to 20 seconds. If it's shorter, then the animation software is automatically going to loop it. So you'll need to design your animation so that it can be looped. So I'm going to leave mine at 10 seconds and leave everything else the same and click OK. And now I've got a new comp called checkerboard. And so I'm just going to do something really simple here. Let's go to Layer and make a new solid and give it a color. That's fine. And then I'm going to go to my effects over here and I'm going to toss a checkerboard effect onto it. And then what I want to happen is I want that checkerboard animation to change size, let's say. So I'm going to go up here to the width. I'm going to keyframe it starting at 16. And then I'm going to bring it out here and I'm going to bring it up to, let's say, 100. Okay. So as I play this animation, it does that. Great. Super simple animation. Let's see how it looks on the side of the building now. So I'm going to imagine that I want this to be projected just on the front, which would be sections B and D. So to do that, I'm going to turn on both of the side layers. Whoops. There we go. Side, front, top, and side bottom, A and C. And you can see that's going to cover it up, and it's going to leave a hole here. Now I'm going to go to my project. I'm going to grab my checkerboard comp, and I'm going to put it underneath everything. So now it shows through. And now I can play this, and I can get a rough sense of how it would look when it's projected on the side of the building. We are going to run into a problem here, though. And you'll see that once we hit 10 seconds, boom, it stops. It turns black. If this was in the projection mapping software, as soon as it got to 10 seconds, it would immediately return back to the beginning and start playing again. The problem is that that's going to make for a very abrupt transition from very large to very small. Now, maybe you want that, but my guess is most of the time you won't. So when you're designing your animation, you really want to design it so that this last frame matches up with the first frame if your animation is less than 20 seconds long. So let's go in and do that with a checkerboard. I'm just going to go here. I'm going to go to my effect controls, And let's see, I start at 16, which means at the end here, I should end at 16 as well, not 100. And instead, maybe about halfway along, I'm going to switch it to be 100. So now it's going to do this. It's going to zoom in, and it's going to zoom out. And if I preview it, now when it plays, it would get big, it would get small, and then it would automatically loop back to the beginning. Those frames would match up, and it would cycle through twice. Now, one thing you might have noticed is that my checkerboard pattern here, while it looks cool, it doesn't really match the perspective of the building that we're projecting onto. So if you were standing in front of the building, those squares might look a little warped. If you want it to match the direction of the building there, the perspective, then you may need to warp or distort your animation a little bit. Now, in a lot of cases, this isn't going to matter. If your animation is abstract, if it's like of some monster or creature, we're not going to notice the perspective shift that much. But if it has a lot of horizontal and vertical lines, you may want to play with shifting it just a little bit. So here's one way to do it. I'm going to go into my checkerboard animation, and I need to shift the perspective. And to do that, it would be helpful to know the perspective of the building we're projecting onto. So if you go into the project folder and go to the template files, what I can do is I can just grab this entire building layer, drag it down on top. Oops. There we go. And now I can see it in my comp here, and I can use it to test this out. So, for example, let's see, an easy way to do this might be to go into my distort effects, and let's choose this one called corner pin. And what corner pin lets us do is distort a video by pulling the corners out. And I'm going to actually zoom back a little bit here too. So let's go to about 50%. That should work. And now with corner pin selected, I'm going to drag this corner down a little bit. Let's drag this one up a little bit so that the perspective of the checkerboard, I'm looking at the top of it, matches it pretty well. And then maybe pull this one down just a little bit as well. And I could play with this more, but you get the idea. It's roughly lined up. I'm going to turn off that top setting, and you can see I end up with something a lot like this. If I preview it in the preview template, looks pretty good. Looks like it's in perspective there. It's working the way I want. So now it's time to export this video. This is a really, really important step. It's extremely important that when you export the video, you do not export it from the preview template here. Instead, you need to go into your comp where you made it. You need to make sure everything is turned off. You don't want to see the building at all, just the animation. Don't worry if the animation that you made is much bigger than the region where it's going to be projected. That's actually a good thing. You want your animation to be bigger than the size of those masks, because the masks are probably going to move when we set it up on projection night. So you want to give yourself some bleed. You want to make sure that it can go beyond the edges. And in this case, having it go full screen is totally fine. The important thing, though, is I need to know when I save this file which regions I want it projected onto. So I remember from looking at the example before, and I can always go back to the preview template here and turn this on, I want it to go on regions B and region D. So when I save that, I have to remember B and D. So let's export this file now. I'm going to go to File, Export, Add to Render Queue. I can leave all these settings the same. I'm going to go Output to, and this is important, choose where you want to save it. But now the name is extremely important. Start with your name. In this case, I'll use Matt. Next, the number of the video you made. So this is the first one I've made, and you're going to make a bunch of them. So then the number 1, then another hyphen, followed by the regions where I want this projected. So in this case, that will be B So my file name would be mat-1-bd. This is very important because I'm going to have to pull all these together very quickly once we're done making them and get them into the appropriate scenes in the projection mapping software. So having them named properly is going to make my job so much easier. Then go ahead, save it, export it, and you'll be good to go.